That is because everything you do in your company affects how you can price. If you target the wrong or the semi-wrong customer category, you cannot price for profit. If your marketing messages are ineffective, you cannot price for profit. If you push the wrong feature functions in your product or your service, you cannot price for profit. If your sales methodology and your sales channels and your monetization strategy is such that it creates friction, you cannot price for profit. So the whole premises of the book is to understand that everything you do in your company affects your ability to price, or take price, maybe I should say, or your ability to gain pricing power.
Welcome to the Profit Answer Man podcast. We believe the purpose of business is to make lots of money. We'll show you how to scale and grow your profit and cash flow, all while working less. We're a big fan of the ELF model: easy, lucrative, and fun. If you're the backbone of America, you deserve to be well rewarded for that. Listen in to see how other business owners are doing it and how to maximize your profit and cash flow. Welcome back to the Profit Answer Man, Per the Price Whisperer. It's great to have you join us again.
Ricky, it's a pleasure to be on the show, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
As am I, because pricing is one of those things that seems to be a massive struggle, and it's an emotional struggle. As a matter of fact, last time you were on, you had talked about McKinsey research and that a 1% price increase results in an 11.3% profit improvement, which is a massive leverage point. And I'm guessing a lot of people heard that and they did nothing, right? And yet they know intellectually they have to, but behaviorally they're stuck. What's
That's
going
right.
on?
Well, the fact is that McKinsey study was an average of the global Fortune 500, I think. And what I did to it's a very simple calculation, and in fact, on my company's website there is a calculator that anybody can use to see how much a 1% price increase will do for their company in added profits. But for my enjoyment, I went online and I discovered 4 fairly small public companies, and I did that calculation of what a 1% price increase will actually do for those four companies. And the companies were randomly picked. I really don't know anything about them. And of those 4, the 1% would yield a 6% increase for one company, a 16% increase for one company, and a 21% increase for 2 of the companies.
It's massive. I always say for a lot of companies, a 10% price increase results in a doubling of profit.
Yes, it's you don't even, yes, absolutely, you don't have to even do 10%, but absolutely. But the thing is that it works the opposite way if you look at discounting. And in fact, if you have a company that has that sort of average margin of about 10-11%, and your salespeople convinced you that you should discount another 5%, you have to double your sales volume to get the same dollar profit. And how many times have a sales leader or a CEO heard from their salespeople, we have to lower our prices, we have to give more discounts, or from marketing, we need coupons, give away 25%. Right? That's going to make all the difference.
It sounds like lazy sales and marketing. This is why we always recommend that you pay your salespeople on gross profit.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so if they cut the gross profit, they don't get paid.
That's right. Absolutely. Salespeople should always be paid by margin, not by revenue or units sold or anything like that. It's always going to be profit. And at the end of the day, that means that sales and the company have shared goals.
And too often I find owners are afraid to set that standard.
Mm-hmm.
But we do our best to tell them that they have to. I've also heard you
But
say
it's
that
hard.
88% of companies, so that's pretty much all of them, leave money on the table when it comes to pricing.
That's right.
And I think this is, again, I said it's not the logic, it's the behavioral science behind it. And you've done a lot of work in the behavioral science space. So I'd love for you to expand on that.
Well, behavioral science is something that is very interesting, and I actually in the in the shelves behind me, I probably have 2 or 3 dozen books about behavioral science, and then there is a sub version of that called behavioral economics that are then specific to the buying behavior of buyers, and when companies actually understand behavioral science, the whole premises behind behavioral science is that we as humans are imperfect, we are malleable, and we are not rational. And all of that means that the seller can, through clever use of scientific data, position its product or its services and its pricing in such a way that they can charge higher prices at the same time as sales volume will increase and at the same time as customer satisfaction will increase, because it's all linked together. And we leverage, and some of those books that I mentioned are written by 4 Nobel Prize winners, really done some deep research into this and found, I mean, for example, it's been found that a 5-cent painkiller is pretty ineffective, whereas the same painkiller for 50 cents is effective, right? So pricing even reaches into placebo, in the placebo effect.
It's funny how that is. I also have a lot of behavioral science books that I have read on the financial side because
Yep.
I want to understand the financial beliefs of the business owner and whether or not he thinks he's worth the increased price or doesn't. Or
Yep.
a lot of times, if that business owner grew up with the attitude that rich people are evil, he doesn't want his business to get rich.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting data point, I guess.
It happens more often than you can imagine. The behavioral science on the money side is very, very interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean the I I heard a story. I did I do presentations for groups of CEOs ever so often, and in my last presentation 2 weeks ago, one guy said this, that he had this experience of being at a restaurant, and and he was choosing between sort of a mid-sized steak and a large steak at a much higher price, and the waiter came out and said, "But of course you want the manly steak, right?" So he sold the more expensive one. And I remember when I grew up in my native Sweden, I don't know how it is here in the US, but in my native Sweden, it was that, and this is during my, teenage years and early 20s, you could only buy condoms in extra large size, right? No, because nobody will ask for a small or a mid size, right?
They know how to market
That's
to
right.
people. You know, it's funny
So,
because earlier you talked about pricing and how it delivers better service. And I think this is what people don't realize. If you don't charge enough to improve your business, improve your tools, improve your trade, whatever it is, and keep up, those that come in with that higher level are going to get the premium price and they're going to take your customer away. And I think a lot of times we don't realize that. We seem to be driven by the customer who wants the lowest price instead of being driven by the customer who's willing to pay the highest price.
well, and again, I speak to CEOs every day, and they are the vast majority, maybe those 88% that leave money on the table, the vast majority are so afraid of losing a customer. They think that losing a customer is the worst thing that can happen. Whereas in many cases, you can trade off customers that has a higher willingness to pay against a lower sales volume, but then you can serve those customers in a much better way. And let me just give you an example. And obviously, I have nothing to compare with here, but I'm an Apple guy, and my whole company are Apple users, and those are darn expensive computers. I can get a similar-ish feature, function, performance PC for a third of the price, right? But sometimes there are issues, technical issues with Apple computers, and you go into their their website, and you get a little chat window, and in less than 30 seconds you have an Apple expert on the chat. And if that person can't fix the problem in a couple of minutes, the whole thing is escalated, and phone rings and you get to talk to a real expert. And I have not bought their service package or whatever they call it, right? And all my Apples are out of warranty, and yet they provide this absolute excellent support because they can afford it.
They do until a certain point. At a certain point, they tell you that your machine is no longer viable.
That has never happened.
Okay.
That has never happened. And now, having said that, the computers I'm using, they're typically less than 3 years old, right? So, but still, warranty is only valid for 12 months. So, but it keeps my customer satisfaction very high. And when my current MacBook Pro is up for renewal, I'm going to buy another Mac. Right?
You're sold on the ecosystem, and you'll pay the price, which
Yeah,
is a
exactly, yeah.
massive premium.
I pay a massive premium, but it also solves a potentially massive headache. And I can tell you that I had end of last year, I was involved in a project that required me to use a PC. I didn't have a PC, so I went out and I bought a low cost PC. And of course there were issues, and there were absolutely no customer support. I had to go down to my local PC fixer company and pay them almost what I paid for the actual device to have them fix it, and it was still not really fixed.
And I think we're seeing that more and more across the board. Trying to get service today is almost impossible. Trying to get a company to answer their phone is nobody wants to answer their phone and talk to their customers anymore, which means that a company that will pick up the phone and talk to their customer is going to automatically go to the top of the line.
Yep, definitely. And these AI agents that many companies are using I've never had an interaction with an AI agent that actually solved any problem, but they just created more frustration. Right?
Did you know that company had a website? The AI agent keeps telling me that I could go to their website. And I'm like, I went to your website. It didn't answer my question. Why do you think I'm on the phone with you?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then you have some so some companies that they're very friendly when you actually get to support, but they actually never do anything. All right. Yes, we'll take care of your warranty complaint, and then everything goes dark.
Well,
right.
Again, I think in today's world, excellent customer service actually allows you to drive premium pricing and repeat customers and all of that. And yet we don't necessarily tie the values together or have that understanding. And trying to change that culturally inside a company, also very, very difficult to do.
Absolutely. But if we I talked a little bit about how if you actually understand how we as humans, whether you sell B2B or B2C, how we actually make our buying decisions, you can leverage something that's called the paradox of price, which is that leveraging, again, behavioral science, you can increase your prices, you can increase your sales volume, and you can increase your customer satisfaction all at the same time. Right. And obviously, for any company who is interested in shareholder value and growth, enter that paradox of price should be the ultimate goal for any company.
It's funny. I read a story recently about a car wash. And if not that long ago, car washes weren't that expensive. They weren't anything fancy. They were, these kind of old buildings, and the thing was there forever. They didn't charge a lot. and everything's fine. And the one business owner who ran that business didn't want to raise his prices because he was doing okay. And as time went on, somebody opened a fancy, beautiful car wash, one of the new fancy ones with a membership model, and all the people started going there. And he didn't have the excess cash to rebuild his car wash to compete anymore. And so he essentially goes out of business and can't sell.
Yep. Yep. Uh, I see that every time. I had a little while ago. I went to this. We were doing some work in the golf course maintenance industry, and that required me to go to a trade show here in Anaheim for golf course maintenance equipment. Would you believe there's a trade show for something like that, and I had the two giants in that industry is Toro and John Deere. You went into the trade show floor, and these guys had big fancy booth. Everything looked very professional and very slick. And then across the aisle there is this company who also do similar equipment, the mowers and little tractors and whatever you need to maintain a golf course. And they didn't even have a booth, and they just had carpet on the floor. The product didn't look like they came from the same manufacturer. They didn't have any brand identity, and their salespeople looked like they'd been sleeping in their cars. And I managed to, the owner of the company was there at the time, and I managed to get hold of him, and I asked him how he set his prices, and he pointed at Toro across the aisle and said, "Just like them, just 30% less." Right?
That's a massive discount.
Well, it's not. It meant that they would forever struggle. It's just the same story as that car wash, right? And
Yeah.
having said on the particular car wash thing, car washes now has become so darn expensive that I wash my car set myself. Right? I mean, it's for me, it's not worth 50, $60 to have your car washed when you still have to sit there and wait for an hour, right? And then I can just spend an hour washing my own car and get some exercise out of it.
That's what kids are for. You updated your book recently, A Holistic Approach to Pricing Power. And I
Yeah,
know
this is how it looks.
there you go. And when we think about that, there's a lot more to pricing than just the price, right? It's the right
Definitely.
audience, the right messaging, so kind of dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, one of the things that I hear from these CEOs that I speak to every day is that they say we did some price testing and it was inconclusive, and that is because everything you do in your company affects how you can price. If you target the wrong or the semi-wrong customer category, you cannot price for profit. If your marketing messages are ineffective, you cannot price for profit. If you push the wrong feature functions in your product or your service, you cannot price for profit. If your sales methodology and your sales channels and your monetization strategy is such that it creates friction, you cannot price for profit. So the whole premises of the book is to understand that everything you do in your company affects your ability to price, or take price, maybe I should say, or your ability to gain pricing power. Pricing power, by the way, is a term that was coined by Warren Buffett in 2010. He was interviewed by some government agency in relation to the recession in 2008 and 9. And he then said that his main criterion for where he puts his money is whether a company has pricing power or not. And he then continued saying that, and pricing power is the ability to increase price without losing sales volume. And then he further continues saying that if you have to say a prayer before increasing your price with 0.1%, you have a very bad business.
Lots to think about.
Yes.
Right?
But
And yet,
that's the whole premises of the book, a holistic approach that companies, and this is what those 12% who doesn't leave money on the table do. They understand that they have to look at pricing in a holistic way and take control over their pricing, not allow some random cost number dictate their pricing or some random competitor dictate their pricing, but instead leverage knowledge of the marketplace and how behavioral science can allow companies to drive a higher sales volume, higher profitability, and higher customer satisfaction all at the same time.
And one of the things that we always tell our clients is when demand starts to get a little too hot, the easiest way to fix it is raise prices.
No, absolutely.
And so maybe it slows demand down. And if it doesn't, at least it gives you the extra money to hire people to fix the demand issues and be able to handle it.
Yeah.
So it's
But
kind of
that's
a
also
win.
something that's also something that the vast majority of companies don't understand, that if they price for profit, those extra profit doesn't go into a new yacht for the CEO, right? Well, some of it may do, but most of it goes into driving the company forward. More product development, more service definitions, more technical support, more marketing, more sales resources, and all of that. So it becomes a self-reinforcing cycle.
I think one of the biggest benefits, especially for small business, of increased pricing is you can now afford to hire A players. You can
Yes.
afford to hire better people who will take over stuff so you don't have to do it all. It's kind of a way out of you being stuck in the middle.
Definitely, better people are. I mean, we can see that on successful companies here all over the place. I mean, Costco are paying their staff significantly higher wages than other retailers, right? And as a success as a reason, as a result, they have a more successful business, right?
This is where I think a lot of people get it wrong because they'll say, well, their competitor should pay their people more. I go, their competitor, if they were going to pay more, would demand a better quality employee. Costco gets a better quality employee. So they don't need as many of them because they do a good job. They don't need to be managed as tightly. They do the right things, which means you need less layers. So the organization becomes lighter and more fun in that case.
I mean, the another example is how Outback Steakhouse, they grew to roughly 1,600 restaurants. And one of the things they did was have the managers of all of these places on profit sharing. So the managers really took control over their own businesses, and then eventually the original owners sold out, and the new owners took that away, and they now closed.
That happens. We're living in an ever-changing world, and everyone thinks AI is going to solve their problem. So I know you talk about AI. I know you use AI. How does AI work in this pricing model, and what can it do and what can't it do?
Well, what we do in my company is to do willingness to pay research, i.e., it's a very specific way of doing online research to understand why buyers to a company wants to buy, and what drives them to buy, and what drives them to pay, and how much exactly they're willing to pay. And we developed AI some 12, maybe even 14 years ago to help with the analysis of the enormous amount of data that we created. And by the way, back in 98, I think it was, maybe not. Yeah, it must have been 98. I was selling and promoting the very first AI software that was commercially available. So I've been sort of on the commercial side of AI for a little while. But in pricing, AI is great when it comes to analyzing data, but it's always backward looking. It is not forward looking, because AI doesn't invent anything. It takes what is already done and can summarize it for you often in very appealing ways. But if you try to use AI for pricing, looking at basically historical prices, if you can find them, if AI can find them, you know nothing about what will happen tomorrow, right? And not only that, you also don't know what deals your competitors are doing, what bundles they are doing, what off-invoice rebates and kickbacks they may be doing. So even if you get a number for your price, it still doesn't tell you anything than you could have done cheaper by guessing. And guessing, of course, is not a good way of running a business.
It's not. What do you suggest for people who find themselves in a commodity business?
Hmm. Well, in a commodity, so there's two things that well, there are many things that we recommend our clients, but one of the things that every company, almost every company, can do, and that is to realize that almost every company have some product or services that are unique, some products that are complete, or product or services that are complete commodity, and something that is in between. Then the company needs to have pricing strategies that are different for these products or services. So the first thing to do is simply to categorize them. You can call the categories A, B, or C, or 1, 2, or 3, or red, green, and blue, whatever. It doesn't matter. But the category that are unique, and your customers do not have an alternative. So for that reason, stop all discounting, increase price. And for the product or services that are commodity, work relentlessly to get a cost out, because a commodity is sold on lowest price alone, because it's exactly the same as all the other competing products in that category or services. And when you have something that is in between, look at how you can possibly make it unique in some way, so you get pricing power on these particular product or services. And this, just a simple thing like this, can often double profit margin in a company, right? Just by going through the products and categorize them and having different pricing strategies for each category.
And I've
Very
noticed
simple.
that.
Something almost no company do.
Yeah, it's not surprising to me anymore. I always used to wonder why people don't do all the things they're supposed to do, and yet it seems to be a consistent.
Yeah, and commodity products, if is I mean, if you have products, often you can add services to the product that increases the perceptional value of the buyer, and therefore increases the ability to charge higher prices.
And some of those
And
things are right timing, how quickly you can do it. That
yeah, it could be timing, it could be, there's a very interesting example that I'm using in my presentations. As there's a company out there called Hilti. They do professional level electrical hand tools, and they're based in Liechtenstein, which is a tiny country between Switzerland and Austria, about the size of Disney World in Florida, but is not a low-cost country to run a business. So they have a whole slew of services to add to their product to justify their high prices. I mean, they have fleet management, calibration services. You can look it up on the website. It's very impressive, to be honest, on how they really focused on adding value to their hardware with services and software.
interesting. Yeah. It I think a lot of times it's taking the time to think and look at your business and say, how do I break out of this paradigm? How do I do things differently?
Yep.
And what might work in our
Yeah.
particular situation? And I think that's a big part of it. And I think
Mhm.
when you do that, that's called working on your business instead of in your business,
Yeah.
then that's where the opportunities come up to get premium pricing, or
Yeah.
just
And
create your own marketing category of one, and then you
yep.
become the only one who can fill it. And if people see it as a different value, they will pay for it. And I've seen many companies do that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. Companies need to take control of their own pricing, and and very few do. And understanding how we as buyers, I mean, the purchase decisions are made emotionally by our limbic system, even in business to business. And then we add rationale on top of it because we're supposed to be rational beings, and we add rationale not only for ourselves. I made this decision because I evaluated and decided, but also for if somebody asks, why did you buy this, and you then have an answer. And many times, I mean, if you remember, we used to say nobody gets fired for buying IBM, right? I don't even know if IBM exists anymore, but it's that trust in, if certainly if you're in B2B and you make a decision, a buying decision that didn't work out, and it's an expensive decision, that could be a career-ending move. So therefore you have to justify it by saying, I bought the whatever it is, I bought the most from the most trustworthy brand, and so forth, because nobody gets fired for buying IBM. And in fact, there's statistics out there saying that 81% of buyers buys what they perceive is best value, not lowest price. And best value comes from all of that we talked about that affects a buyer's perception of value, marketing, and yeah. So
Here's the real secret. If you're B2B and you're not dealing with the owner, it's not their money. They don't
yeah,
treat it as if it is anyway. So it's a whole different game. It's like you
yeah,
said,
that's
they're
right.
trying to protect their job or they're trying to hit some goal that has nothing to do with the price. And
That's right.
it's funny because there's a business consultant that I listen to, and he consults into large corporations. And he used to discount if they paid up front. He found out though that the discount didn't matter. What mattered was the executive wanted to pay up front so that they couldn't take his budget away. So he's like,
Yeah,
I'm giving a discount for no reason.
yeah. Well, I'm not surprised. The I mean, it goes back to that we are not rational beings. I am not, you are not, and the listeners are not, and more importantly, the clients to our listeners are not. All right,
And
so
that's what we forget is the people we're selling to aren't us and they have their own belief system.
that's right. That's right.
And you
They
should
aren't
be
us.
aware of it.
Yep.
If people would like to learn more about your services, your book, where do they find you?
Well, I go by, I have a moniker. I go by the moniker The Price Whisperer. And if you Google The Price Whisperer, you should find about 10 million hits about me. So that is really the best way of getting in touch with me, because I do have this wacky Swedish name, and it's makes total sense in Scandinavia, but not so much here in the US. So
The good news is we'll put a link directly to your website in the show notes so they can find you.
even that.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ricky. It was a pleasure, and I hope the audience found this interesting as well.
Thanks for listening to this unedited video of the Profit Answer Man podcast. If you'd like to catch the full episode and learn more about what we do, check us out at profitcomesfirst.com. We also go through the Profit First book in each and every chapter in the beginning episodes of the podcast, so check those out as well. Thanks for listening, and here's to you having a more profitable and growing business.